All right, welcome everybody. Rob Pravasha here from No BS Photo Success with our webinar with WarneNoyce all the way from North Battleford, Saskatchewan. And tonight we're going to talk about more of a technical webinar to do with off-camera flashes, specifically the Canon line of flashes. So it's a little bit of a niche sort of topic for all you Canon users, and we know you guys are in the majority. And there's a lot of you guys out there. So all of those guys and people and girls and ladies and photographers around the world who have always kind of admired the Nikon system, well, apparently Canon can do the same thing with their TTL creative lighting system. And I've always been curious how Canon does it too, even though I'm a Nikon shooter, and we're going to find that out tonight in this webinar. Just to give you a quick kind of overview of how we're going to handle this webinar, if you have any questions, you should have a question box. Just fire them if they're urgent. I am going to moderate all the questions. If I have an answer, I will answer it to you directly. If I think the question needs to be answered and best served to everybody in attendance, I will interrupt Warren and ask him the question, so we'll get an immediate answer. If the question is better served towards the end, we're going to save it towards the end for a Q&A towards the latter part of the webinar. So that's sort of the approach we're going to take with tonight's webinar. I do want to plug one important event coming up in April, and that is the Inferno Workshop. And Warren, of course, is one of the speakers. Now, Warren was at the Inferno in November in Nashville, and he did an outstanding job. And so we decided, because most of the people who come to the Nashville Inferno likely are not going to be coming to the Toronto Northern Inferno in April, so decided to have him back again. We're going to repurpose him again and have him do another presentation there. He's a dynamic speaker. He's got a lot of great information, a lot of passion. It really comes through. And also, Warren, you speak at Niagara School of Imaging as well?
You bet. Yeah, we're at NSI in August.
And I'm going to brag on your behalf that Warren sells out probably above and beyond any other teacher or presenter at Niagara School of Imaging. His attendance record is just, I was jealous because I used to teach them too. And
yeah, it was pretty crazy.
You know, you beat we thought we had the highest classroom attendance rate, but you had us beat, not by much, but you're only one person, and for us it was two, James and I, but you did awesome, and it was cool to hear that most of the people told you that they would come back and just redo your entire class all over again because you were such a crappy instructor, they had no idea what you were saying, so they have to go back a second time. No, I'm joking. They really enjoyed it. And you know, that's a really good strategy, by the way. When you find somebody you really, really enjoy, I've been through this myself. I will go see them again and again and again, even if they're teaching the same darn thing, because I just love good content, and you know, it's always worthwhile burning it into your consciousness. So I'm thinking everybody can see the screen, so we're good to go. And at the end of this webinar, Warren is going to also, he's got some DVDs available, and he's going to plug that. But don't forget to consider coming out to see Warren live and in person at the InfernoWorkshop.com. That's InfernoWorkshop.com, April 13th, 14th, and 15th in Toronto. All right, having said that, I am going to hand over control and let you know, in case you want to watch this again, it is being recorded and will be installed in No BS Photo Success members only forum if you want to watch it for future reference. So, Warren, welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm glad you made it, and I know you've been traveling a lot in the last few days, so I'm glad you're here, and really appreciate you sharing your information. So you are on, my good man.
Whoa, I'm on. Hey everybody, my name's Warren, and yeah, we just actually pulled in from New Brunswick last night. We spoke at the PPOC Atlantic Convention, so we've been flying all over the crazy place in the last couple of days trying to get back. But when Rob asked me, you know, if I wanted to do this webinar on off-camera flash, you know, with the Canon flashes, I thought, yeah, that would be cool and pretty easy to put together, and so I've spent the last while kind of putting a bit of this together, and I guess it's easy. I thought it would be easier to put it together in certain ways because I always just do it. I don't really think about what I do. So to sit down and really write it down and, you know, figure it all out, it was wouldn't say a huge challenge, but a little bit of a challenge. So I put it all together. Most of the images that you see of mine that aren't in the studio, that are on location, anything like that, basically are shot with off-camera flash, ETTL, and I do use the Canon system. So to start with, I'll try to figure this out. Hang on. It's only my second ever webinar, so you got to bear with me a little bit. Basically, the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about ETTL, off-camera flash setup. Probably 75% of what I shoot is with ETTL. Manual, a little bit, probably the other 20-25%. I tend to like the ETTL setup and not the manual. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that I use. I keep it really, really simple. I kind of call it a teeter-totter kind of technique, and I'll discuss a little bit about it when we get into it. And I'm going to show some examples. I went through and grabbed a whole bunch of examples with my camera and flash settings where I was. So basically, I use off-camera flash to create a real dramatic look. I definitely have a style with it. I process it up, a certain way as well. So I try to get the image where I want it to look, and then I know what I'm going to do with it after, in post-processing. I do really like to keep it simple. Again, I use ETTL for probably, and AV mode on my camera for probably 75% of my remote shooting. Some people say it's inconsistent. I don't have too much problem with it. The only time it might be inconsistent is if we're shooting into the sun, let's say. You're out and you're firing into that big old fireball in the sky. Makes it a little harder for your AV, your camera to figure it all out anyway. So that is when I switch to manual. So what I do is, why would I shoot it in ETTL AV mode? To keep it simple, I can just, if I've got a client and we find a real cool, we're walking along, let's say in an old building, and there's some nice light coming in, and I'll put, the model in, with their back to the light, kind of, figure out how I'm going to have her look. All I do is I pull it up. I can take one shot. It's always on the fly. I never worry about metering with my flashes at all. It's all done. Let the camera take, do all the work. Never ever worry about metering, at all. I like to shoot a lot of high-speed sync. An example, f2.8, 1/1600th of a second, gives you a real short depth of field. And quite often, that is my settings into the sun outside at 100 ISO. 1/1600th, 1/2000th of a second if we're on a bright sunny day. It's kind of cool. It's just my style. It's the look I like anyway. It's not for everybody, but I really dig the look. Less dust spots. I've shot a bunch of the the old into the sun with the f/16, all that kind of stuff. And if you've got any dust spots on your sensor, they stick out like a sore thumb. You shoot at f2.8, you won't see very many of them at all. It's some we're going to get into a little bit. My gear. I use a Canon, of course, Canon cameras. I have a 1DS Mark III and a 5D Mark II. I still almost like my 1DS Mark III with my off-camera flash better than the 5D Mark II. I can't get as high of ISO with the 1DS Mark III, and I'll explain in a little bit about how when I do pull the shutter on that first image, how I adjust my ISO to a shutter speed that I can comfortably hold. And I'll explain a little bit about that, in the future in here. So the 5D Mark II has a less noise at the higher ISO, so it's a little bit better at the higher ISOs than my 1DS Mark III. But I still really like the feel of the 1DS Mark III, so I still use it for the most part. I do have the 580EXs and the 580EX2s. I pull out the EXs sometimes, but I've pretty much graduated to the EX2s. Really not a lot of difference in them other than the actual physical dimensions and the switching. They do the same thing. I've photographs to show how to set up both of them, and very much the same flash. The 580EX is even a little bit easier to get your, to set up than the EX2 actually. I use a 15-inch Last-A-Light softbox, small. I don't use a bigger softbox than that, and the old joke is it's not the size of the softbox, but it's how you use it. So I end up using a 15-inch Last-A-Light softbox. It's small. I can have, your assistant, my assistant, Paula, she's the one who assists me, or whoever you have, can maneuver it around. You can put the light anywhere you want. Then I use a painter pole as opposed to a monopod. I had a monopod, and it just kind of heavy. It didn't go as long as I wanted it to. I was doing some photographs of a girl on a big spiral staircase, and I wanted to get the flash way up high, and dang monopod didn't reach very high. You can go into a Home Depot or a PV Mart or anywhere, and for $5 buy a painter pole that will extend to 10, 12 feet. Pretty cool. And all you have to do is take where the threads are. If it's got a plastic end, you take it to where the threads are. Take an X-Acto knife. Be careful you don't cut your finger off, and just strip the threads off it. And your the softbox bracket will just slip right over top of the end of the painter pole. It's super light, really easy, and they're $5. So I end up using. You'll see there's a couple images, in the presentation here where you can see the baby blue painter pole that we have, and it works awesome. It's worked for me all year, and for $5, it's about as easy as it gets. Basically, operation for the ETTL. This is how I do it. I shoot it in AV mode, which is aperture priority. I shoot most of my stuff at 2.8. It depends where, what, and how I'm doing. If I'm photographing a family out in the hillsides, I do want a little bit of the, I don't want to blur out the hills and the trees in the background too much. Again, it's a personal feel of how much, you do blur them out by dropping your f-stop. I'll tend to shoot at that 4.5 to 5, 6, somewhere in there. I like a little bit of softness in it. I don't want it to be tack sharp. When I process it, using some of James' like Haji Soft, what it'll do is it gives it that real almost painter feel. If you put that little bit of that softness on after the fact, add a little bit of saturation, it gives that real soft kind of painter look. So I'll shoot anywhere in a situation like that from 4.5 to 5, 6. As far as an f-stop. I use the exposure dial to adjust ambient light. The analogy to me is the exposure, and again, I have a photograph coming up, we'll go over it. The exposure, which is the line, the little arrow basically with your, -2, -1, 0, +1, +2 exposures. I consider that ambient light. That's my analogy. So if you dial your exposure down, you're bringing your ambient light down. You're turning the lights out. If you, crank up your exposure, you're adding ambient light, okay? Like I always talk about turning the lights out or turning them on, and depending which way you go with that dial. Then what I do is you use the flash power, which is your master, which is the flash which is set up on your camera, to adjust the flash to taste. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you get in the swing of it, usually on your second shot, you'll be where you want to be. So I'll usually take my first shot at 0, 0, and then I'll take a quick look at my LCD, decide if the ambient light is where I need it to be compared to the flash. If the ambient light is too bright, I will knock down my ambient or exposure. I'll drop it down to -1/3, -2/3. With a bit of practice, you'll know where to go almost instantly. Then I bring the flash up to compensate. So it's like a teeter-totter, if you know what I mean. You have your flash and your ambient light, flash and your exposure. So you're going to ride those. As your exposure drops, you have to bring your flash up to compensate for it, and vice versa. That's the theory behind how I shoot, with my ETTL. You have to make sure that the master sync is turned off. I don't ever shoot with the master flash, which is on the camera. Again, I use two 580 EX2s for mine. I have the one 580 EX2 on my camera, the other one set up as a slave. You have to make sure that the master sync is turned off, or it will sync with your shutter, and you will get the fill flash straight on. I guess you can do that if you like, if you prefer that. I don't like that. I like to use just a single flash. Manual technique. There's a few different ways, or a couple different ways. I don't do it a lot. one of the guys, actually John Beasley out in the coast, this was his way, and it's pretty slick. He basically uses the live view on his 5D Mark II, pops it open, in manual, takes it to where his exposure or his ambient where he wants it to be, and then just adds flash to suit. It's about as easy as it gets. I mean, you've got the live view mode on your 5D Mark II, and then and your 1D Mark III, I guess, and all those Mark IV, I guess, cameras. So that's how he does it, and it works slick. It works awesome. Or you can start in AV mode, which is what I've always have done for the bright sunny days and the odd instance where the AV isn't as consistent as I want it to be in the ETTL. So basically, start at AV mode, look through your lens basically, and take a reading, to find out your appropriate ambient light, then switch it to manual, adjust your numbers to match, and then add your flash. And again, it takes a bit of practice, but once you get the swing of it, it's pretty easy as well. So that's basically the manual techniques that I think are pretty awesome and work well. Again, ETTL techniques that I use, I start my very first image, like I say, will set up. I use if I have a model and we're looking, let's say we're taking a walk down a street at night, and I'm looking for any kind of ambient light, like a street light. Quite often I'll use street lights, and lights in buildings, anything like that to have in behind, almost as a secondary light source. Then what I do is I'll bring my 15-inch last light softbox with 580 EX2 in it, and I'll bring that in usually at 180 degrees to it. I know they always talk about you're not supposed to have two lights at 180 degrees, but I tend to use, if I'm using anything like that, I'll use the softbox at 180 degrees to the other light source. I'll take my first shot, again, even exposure, ambient, flash output is set to 0, and pull the trigger, open, have a look in your LCD. How does the ambient light look in comparison to the flash? If I'm looking at the background and it is quite bright, let's say it's just too hot, again, and I use histograms. I'm pretty religious on the histogram thing unless I'm shooting like a high key scenario, but for anything out and about around around town, in a lobby of a hotel, if you're shooting there, we shoot a lot around hotels, that's always really cool. But anything like that, I use the histogram, quite religiously, and at least to an even exposure. I've heard different stories. Some say plus a third on your exposure is the ultimate amount of information on the sensor. You don't want to go hotter than that because you start to lose pixels. But if you're even exposure or a third over, that's pretty awesome. So I'm watching the background. I'll take it to the exposure that I want it to be. If I want it to be really dramatic, I'm going to pull that exposure of the background down, okay? Then I will bring the flash up to compensate, okay? So if I want the ambient light to look a little darker, a little more dramatic, like it was shot in the evening as opposed to the middle of the day, I'm going to bring down my ambient or my exposure. I might knock it to 2/3 under. Then I'm going to take my flash and bump it up to plus 2/3 and take a photograph. And it's quite drastic, the difference when you see it, and how you can actually shut the ambient light out and add in the flash, all within a shot or two. Again, I've been doing it now for years, and I can do it within pretty much one shot. I can get it to where I want it to be. Then again, you just adjust accordingly after to your taste. My flash setup, if I look at it, here is the 580 EX2s. The left flash, I'm going to mess around with this pointer thing because I'm just set up. This is on my second ever webinar, so you got to bear with me a little bit. Second flash, or the first flash, is the master, the one on the left. And if you look at the setup on it, I'm going to step through it. I have my flash right here in my hand. What I'm going to do is you want to hold down the zoom button until it flashes, and it will show off. What you want to do is then turn the round dial. So you hold the zoom button until this flashes. It'll say off right here. Turn the round dial, okay, Bear with me and stop flashing. There we go. You're going to turn that down until it shows master. Hit the center button. Your channel 1. Your flash, if it's in default modes, if you look over to the right to the slave flash, we'll have the little flash output in front of the flash right here. That will be in front of the flash on your master flash. That means it is synced with your shutter. You don't want that. So what you do is you take it and you basically keep pressing the zoom button until this little output symbol is flashing. So the output flash in front, I guess, try to get my words right here. The flash will be flashing in front of the flash. Geez, that's a tongue twister if there ever was. Basically what you want to do then, it'll have an off and an on button here. Well, that's flashing. So you turn your round dial down here and turn it off, press the center to set it, and now you will see it's not there. So all you've done is turn the sync of this flash off. You can use it as a master. You do not want your shutter to pick it up. Next thing you do is press your high-speed sync button, which is right there. You will get this little icon up here in the top that will show high-speed sync. That's it. I leave it on channel 1. You can do this with multiple flashes if you like. I tend to keep it really simple. I shoot with just one flash, so I just keep it on channel 1, real easy peasy.
Hey, Warren.
So, yes.
Quick question here from Kevin.
Absolutely.
Wants to know if you're using the Pocket Wizards TT5 and TT1 to set off the flashes.
No, what I'm doing with these is I'm using the IR unit on these. I used to have radio poppers, and in all honesty, I had a pile of grief with them. I don't know if I should be saying that on here, but I ended up with a bunch of grief. I was actually photographing a $100,000 gown for a big wedding. They flew the gown up from LA and the whole 9 yards, and I had radio poppers, and they gave me a bunch of grief and didn't work right. I ended up just pulling them off and using the infrared units. So I have to have the IR unit, which is on the other side of this flash here, okay? On the other side of your slave flash. The thing about shooting this way is it has to be a line of sight, which means that when your master flash flashes, what it's doing is sending out a little pre-flash. The master flash is on your camera. It's sending out a little pre-flash to the slave flash. The IR unit on the other side of the flash picks it up and then tells this flash, or basically listens to the master flash and does what it's telling it to. That is why this one doesn't sync. All it's doing is sending a pre-flash to the slave. So I use IR unit all the time. Again, the only disadvantage is you have to be in, it has to have a line of sight between the two flashes to work. I've heard stories, I've never done it, talking with some people on the weekend out on the coast, and the one guy said he always has a little piece of tin foil, or a little piece of foil. And he said you can put that on a wall with a little chunk of gum, whatever, anywhere, and it will kick that flash across. So you can go around corners with it, things like that. He said it works great. So I thought that was kind of a neat little trick. I've never tried it. But as far as the Pocket Wizards units, no, I haven't used those. I know a lot of people do nowadays too. And yeah, something I just find this works. I've got all the 580s, so I just use them. Works real good. So hopefully that answers your question. Don't use the Pocket Wizards. Not right now anyway. And so that's how I set these up. I go over to the right. So I set the master up. I go to the right. I do the same thing. I hold the zoom button down until it's flashing. I turn the dial until it's in slave. And slave A is fine. That is if you want to have different slaves in different channels. Again, I tend to use just one flash. You could have a slave A and a slave B channel, so you could have different flashes on the different channels as well. It's similar to the Nikon setup, very similar. Channel 1, as long as these two match, the master and the slave match as channel 1, you're good to go. Any of this other stuff, you don't even have to have the high-speed sync on here. None of that matters, as long as it's on your master, okay? That's my exact setup for shooting a high-speed sync right there. I'm going to show you the master close-up. Again, that's how it looks. Hold the zoom button down till it flashes. Turn your big dial till it's in master. Channel 1. Press the zoom a bunch of times repeatedly until the flashes in front of the flash are flashing. And then it'll say on, off. Turn it off. and that's where you'll sit. Put your high-speed sync button, hit it once, and you're there. Mode ETTL. That's about it. But look, that's the slave. That's how the slave's set up.
That's very close to the Nikon system, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, it's not a lot different. Again, I don't know a ton about the Nikon other than NSI. We had over 20 photographers in my class, and they were dang near split down the middle,
Really?
Nikon and Canon.
That's
Yeah, so I learned a lot about Nikon there.
That's unusual. I just got to ask you a quick question, like, even though I don't shoot the Canon.
Yep,
How did you get to the high speed?
right here.
You
You
just
can
hit
see
that? Yeah, you just hit that button and that's it?
hit that button. Hit it once. This will pop on and off.
And then
Your
when,
little icon up here by the ETTL.
and then you assign each flash either master or slave.
You bet. Yeah, you have one master, of course, which is this one.
And that's on
You'll have
camera.
that one, which would be on your camera.
Mm-hmm.
Then that one, which is your slave. And you can actually get different channels for your slave as well. Of course, you can have 4 flashes, however many you want.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
You can have 3, 4 unlimited amount of flashes all on the same channel, or you can have multiple channels.
Absolutely.
That's identical to the Nikon system.
Yes, it is. I think that you guys have more channels.
Yeah, I think there's 4.
Yeah, I think we only have 2 actually.
Oh, okay.
That's
I just assumed you had 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think we only have 2. Again, I never mess with it much.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
The only time I've ever gone away from using the same channel was very rare, and if ever, I've only needed 2.
Gotcha.
So that's just
There's
for me.
4. I just had a look. So yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, we ever going to use more? No, it does have 4 though. I just had a quick look.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's basically how I set it all up right there. You know, camera settings, real quick. Bear with the dirt and everything. I just kind of snapped some photos of it today to get these all set up for you guys. AV mode, ISO, doesn't really matter. We're going to talk in a few minutes about that. I shoot a lot of stuff at 2.8. I shoot a lot in the evenings, out on the streets at night, you know, hotel hallways, you know. That's so fun. You will end up, you know, you get some models, you end up at a hotel in the lobby around, you know. Some of the old hotels are pretty cool. They let you shoot all over the place, so we get to shoot all over the place that way. I shoot a lot at 2.8. That's pretty much exactly how it has. This is your exposure, -3 to +3, 0. I always start my first shot at 0. And then back actually on my flash, here, it would be up here. It doesn't show, I don't know why the heck I didn't set it up to show. It will show 0 as your flash output, right there. So you can start get your flash at 0 and exposure at 0. That's where I take my first shot every time. It's just like boom, that's what I do, just to see where I sit. Again, this line here, I consider that ambient light. If I turn that down to -1, I'm turning out the lights a little bit. Again, I have some examples coming up I'll show you guys as well. That's about it. That's how I shoot my everything. Set up, that's my whole setup from the back. Big dial is the ambient light. And you get good at riding it. You'll know your camera inside and out. It's just like an extension of your arm. So you can just fire. Again, I don't mess around. I don't play around metering. I don't do anything like that. Quick shot, have a look on my LCD. Again, one of the reasons I religiously followed histograms on this particular camera, crazy expensive camera, this LCD sucks on this camera compared to the 5D Mark II. I could never trust it, ever, ever, ever. So all I'm really using it for is to look, Danny give me heck for saying it, that visual ratio from ambient to flash. And that's what I call it anyway. It's that visual ratio of the backgrounds to the subject. And that's all I use it for. I'm not looking at it for any kind of an exposure as such. That's what the histogram's for. So that's how I set up my you know, flash on my camera right there. These are the EXs, the old ones. Part of what makes them more simple, you just click to master, you click to slave. That's it. Set them up the same way with your zooms, high-speed sync button, mode button, that's all the same. Not a lot different with the flashes. I think the new ones are a little more programmable. I never go that in-depth with them at all. For the style of shooting I do, the EXs and EX2s are awesome. These ones actually rarely even get pulled out of my bag. It's more just to have with me at weddings if I need some extra flashes, or the odd time I might set up 2 flashes, but for the most part I just use 1 flash for everything I do. I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios. Basically, this is a mall we had in a hair salon, and her name's Tabitha. What I do, exposure and ambient are at 0. Okay? Flash output is at 0. This is where my first shot would be every time. I take 1 look. I'm looking through the shutter now. I'm looking through the lens, and I'm looking at my numbers. And as I pull the trigger halfway down, just take a reading. Let the camera take a reading. I started at 400 ISO, and I was at like 1/20th of a second, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly what it was. And all I could think of was like, I'm not going to be able to hold 1/20th super smooth. I can hold 1/40th to 1/60th pretty good. 1/60th I can hold still pretty much every time, and higher. So what I do is, as I'm looking through the lens, I basically grab my ISO, pull my ISO up until I'm at a shutter speed that I know I can comfortably hang on to. So that is where I hit 1/60th. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go at 1/60th. So that's the shot, my very first shot with that model in that scenario. Again, I'm always looking for background light and ambient. They had these cool lights, and I thought, we can do something with those. Let's put Tabitha, we'll set her on the bench. I'm going to fire these lights around. This went above her head. I fired down onto here. I wanted to show a little bit of separation to the background. And actually the bottom light, I pointed at the back of her head. So she's rim lit. So that's how I did it in one shot. Then to demonstrate, what I did was the next shot I took, 800 ISO still. I brought my exposure and ambient light down and my flash output up to +1. So what I've done now is turned the lights out, so to speak, at -1, flash output up to +1. So if you look at the difference, that to that, and then for all intents and purposes the next time, I bumped it, still at 800 ISO, -3 on my exposure and ambient. I just turned the lights right out. Flash output up to +2 to compensate. Actually, I went to +3 and I took a look at it. It's too hot. And like I say, when you get to know your gear, within 1 or 2 shots, you'll know exactly where you want to be. I did these more just for training purposes. But you can see how in 3 shots, that was the first one, which I ended up using because I was happy with it. -1, +1, -3, +2. And you're looking at that on your LCD. And you're like, man, I have no ambient light. It's just dead. It's a flatter image, right? That one, we got a little bit in behind her, but I didn't like it as much. I like lots of light in behind. That I know I'm going to do a nice burn, maybe put a texture, something like that on in the post-processing after. So that was my very first shot, which I ended up doing that with. Made it real, just kind of crazy, threw a gradient actually over it, and made it really bright and pop. So started with that to that. And that's 0, 1/60th of a second at 800 ISO. So that's how easy it is if you can get the swing of it. It's real simple with some practice. That's really all it takes. Here's another example. This was shot 1600 ISO, f2.8, 1/40th of a second. And I remember thinking when I was shooting this, I'm thinking, okay, 1/40th is pushing it, but if I'm real careful, I can pretty much hang on to 1/40th of a second. 0 on the flash and the ambient. Again, I didn't even have to touch anything. For the most part, in a scenario like this, 0 is going to be really close to where you need it to be. Again, I'm looking for something cool behind her, some cool ambient light. I'm always watching for background light. That's super important because I'm only using 1 flash. I'm not bringing in flashes from all over the place to add light. I'm using, the environmental light as much as I can. So I'm always looking for cool things, cool leading lines, stuff like that that will make the photograph interesting and make the image interesting, once I put some flash into it. Then that's the final. Kind of cool, real easy. Just burned it in a bit, added a soft light layer over it just to make all this stuff really pop. And that was about it.
Warren,
Brightened her up a bit.
hey Warren, is that
Yep.
that's just one flash, not diffused or anything? It's just straight on.
Nothing. Well, yeah, there's basically what there is, and how I shoot too. You know, my theory behind a softbox, it's just that 15-inch Lastolite softbox. So it's got the little scrim on the front. It's got the little, you know,
Oh, okay,
you
there
know,
it is. Yeah.
white plastic deal over here on the right. Yeah, that's the actual 15-inch Lastolite softbox there. Again, I've shot it with the one master flash on my camera,
Uh-huh.
and this is the 580 EX2 over here on the right.
That's pretty
with
cool.
the IR unit. Yeah, it's so simple.
How does
You know,
the like you have that little softbox on your flash?
yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
it like it doesn't read the scene? That's all that information is being pulled in from the master at the camera, right?
It's totally being pulled in from the master of the camera. It's just doing what the master's telling it to do.
But the secondary flash has got to know that there's this diffusion unit in front of it, and so your master flash has got to know that too somehow. There's got to be some sort of a method for it to compensate for that. To
I'll
add,
be honest. I don't know. There has to be, I guess.
it's working, right?
Yeah, it works, so that's why I've never really ever questioned it.
So the
I
flash,
mean, it does make sense, though.
the second flash must also be reading the scene as well, because I mean, it's got to know, it's got to be compensating somehow because it's got this like little softbox in front of it. So how else does it know it's there?
Yeah.
Unless there's some sort of an adjustment being made on the output during the actual exposure, which is typical of TTL.
I think that's what it must be. Yeah.
Yeah. Quick question for you from Lisa.
Yes.
She
Absolutely.
says if you have one EX and one EX2, which one is better used as the master?
Doesn't really matter
Doesn't matter.
that I know of. You also can use a 430 as a slave. You can't use it as a master, but you can use it as a slave. So if you do, and we were in Nashville actually, Joe, there's a couple guys down there were playing around with their flashes, and they had a couple 430s. Yeah, again, you can't use the 430 doesn't have the technology in it to be used as a master, but the 580 does.
Cool.
Really doesn't matter, in my opinion, on which you want as your master or your slave with the 580 EX2 and EX2. I don't believe there's any difference.
Brent's
Again,
asking,
I just kind of,
Brent's asking you a question, and I think I even know the answer to this one, and I'm not even a Canon shooter. Are you adjusting the flash exposure from the back of the master flash or from the camera body?
Scenario, I'm adjusting it on the flash.
Okay.
On the back of the flash. If you have another option too. I had one of these as well, and I found I didn't like it as much. I had one of the little Canon IR unit triggers. It's small. It's about 2/3 the price of an actual 580. You put it on, and then you control that using your camera. And you can actually hit your flash button on the back of your camera and use the big dial basically to control your flash.
Cool.
Out from your camera as opposed to the flash. I like doing it this way. Like I said, I used to have one of those that I used with my radio poppers. Because when you use radio poppers, you put the radio popper, you can put it on the flash or on the little infrared unit. And I ended up buying an infrared unit for it and didn't like it as much. I didn't find it as consistent. Again, this is what I've always done. But yeah, you adjust it on the back of the flash, on the master flash.
Kelly has a question for you. She's saying, what about the 550EX? She has one
right?
She has one 580 EX2 and one 550 EX. Any thoughts on that?
I honestly don't believe the 550 works this way.
No.
I don't believe it does. I think that Joe, the guy I was talking about, his fellow came from Toronto, him and his daughter down to Inferno, Nashville, and we were playing with he had a 550, 580, and a 430, and that 550 we couldn't get to sync. We played with it for quite a while.
Okay.
Messed with settings. So
you're probably
unless
right.
maybe it was old and beat up and wasn't working, I don't know. But I'll be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
But I don't believe it does. So again, that's just that sample. Again, I'm just showing some different samples and where my actual settings were. I went back through and got all the settings. This is that one I posted. There's that fancy blue painter pole for $5. And I'm actually not happy the way Paul is. This isn't a good example of how I would be feathering my flash. it's a little bit too harsh across on you know, the guy here. I would have this flash pointed straight across them. To me, the best light comes up perpendicular from the side of the softbox. So I would have this flash twisted probably another 40 degrees, 30, 40 degrees back towards me. So it's washing straight across at 90 degrees. But I mean, it's fine. It worked out awesome in this photo. But this is 200. I went in and actually in the metadata here today and grabbed these numbers. It was shot at 200 ISO. It was in the evening, so it's getting darker. The light was just peaking on the horizon. You can see it in the hair. It's hitting the back. It's almost at 180 from where Paul is holding the flash here. Then you can see the IR unit on the flash has to always be, you know, towards the master flash. 5.6, again, I wanted a little bit of blur in the background. I didn't want it too tight, okay? 1/80th of a second. In a situation like this, you're going to know almost instantly because it is bright coming into your camera. You've got sunbeams shining in. My hand is actually up to the top left, shading the lens from lens flare, or from the sun flaring in the lens. And so I've just got my hand up over the top corner, just so it's not, you know, you can see a little bit of actually the flare here. And so anyhow, 5.6, 1/80th of a second, -1/3 on the exposure. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit, and +1 on the flash. Again, you're fighting that fireball with this flash. So you're going to have to crank up your output on this flash because you're combating that light. Again, if you're in a dark room, couple little lights, you're not going to have +1 as your output power on your flash. But when you're out in the bright sun, you're going to have to crank it up. Again, if you're shooting straight into the sun, I do a lot fairly tight into the sun where it's super bright on a bright sunny day. And if you're using high-speed sync will suck the power right out of your flash. So I will take this softbox right off and use a bare flash. One of the biggest tricks if you're using a bare flash, though, is you have to have it fairly straight in. You don't want it too far off center because you get that big harsh line down the sides of the nose. You know what I mean? So one trick that I always use, if I have to pull this off, I shine the flash down the back side of the nose. So in a group setting, it's a little different. You wouldn't use it as much in a group. But if you had, let's say Stacy here in the middle, we were going to photograph her. She got the sun super bright behind her. So we're going high-speed sync. We're going to have to pull this softbox off so that we can, you know, get enough power, because it doesn't have enough power to shoot through this and combat the sun. So what we would do is pull this off. The flash is going to shoot down the back side of her nose. So in our case, our left, her right. So at the angle that comes off her nose, you know, up at an angle like this, that flash would probably sit about right here, but back out a ways. And we'd hold it out on a monopod, and you'd have to just clone out that little bit of monopod and flash. But that's how I shoot into the bright sun with it. But you pretty much got to get rid of the softbox to do that if you're going to shoot high-speed sync at a low f-stop.
Quick question for you, Warren.
Yep.
Brent's asking about the Elastolite. Did you use the inner diffusion panel or just the outermost diffusion panel?
Actually, I have both in it on this particular one. So I had the inside one out for a while, and again, it kind of depends what you're shooting. You know, you really almost don't need the inner one in it.
Quick review question for you. Don's asking, and this is probably good just to cover just for a quick review. Those numbers on the very bottom, you got -1/3 +1. That's -1/3 was done at the camera. The +1 was done on the flash.
On the flash, yeah.
Okay, just so that she's asking just to verify that.
Again, and that's something, as you do it, you'll get better at it. You know, when you practice it, again, take the 0-0, you take a look and go, wow, that's bright. You know, oh, so I got to pull it down. You know, and you know if you're pulling this down, you're going to have to add flash. Especially know if you're going to be firing into any kind of, you know, something really bright, like bright suns, you know, pretty bright, like super bright lights, anything like that. You're going to have to, you think about it, it makes sense, right? The brighter this light is, the brighter this light has to be to match.
I got a stupid question for you. You probably covered this, and I probably wasn't paying attention, but The master is not outputting any actual flash, any light
Nope.
per se. It's just acting as
Nope.
as a
It's just
sensor.
sending a signal. Yeah, that's
Signal.
all it's doing is sending a pre-flash. Yeah.
Okay.
And then some people,
Can you
what's
turn
that?
it up so it actually does create a little bit of fill?
You can if you want. And to do that, you have to turn, basically, you turn the sync back
Okay.
on your master flash.
Well, do you lose that high speed?
I never do that. I don't like the look of it, you know.
Yeah.
I still really prefer, you know, the drama just having the single light.
I'm with you on that one. Cool.
Yeah. 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 It's all it is, a pre-flash. And it's so neat when you'll see people, you're teaching them, like, well, that one's flashing. It's like, yeah, but the shutter isn't reading that. It's not synced with the shutter at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's only reading the slave.
That's
There's
cool.
the final of that one.
Nice.
And all I've done, that's Haji Soft on the background there.
Cool.
That's it. Gives it a real painter look. So, again, that's why I shoot that at 5.6. Put it in, swipe a little bit of dodge across, a little saturation on the leaves to make them pop. So,
Nice.
this one here, this was shot in Nashville. This was shot at that club we went down to with Aaron J. Goodman. Basically, I'm looking for light. I'm looking for that secondary source again, right? So we were doing some new promo shots for him. So this is 500 ISO, f2.8, 1/100th of a second, 0.0. That was the first shot out of the camera. I'm looking for the light coming out of the window that's hitting the back of his head. So all I've done is put him in front of the window, brought the flash, it's just outside of the frame here, fired across. In front of him though, okay? The brunt of the light actually is hitting here in front of him. So that whole flash is at 90 degrees to me. If you were to draw a line between Aaron and myself, that flash is pointing at 90 degrees across in front of him. So the light that's falling on him is coming from the right-hand side of the softbox. So it's kicking off perpendicular across, gives a super nice soft light, you know, a little bit of drama. But that's, yeah, 2.8, 1/100th of a second, 0.0. And all I did was that. Cleaned it up a bit, threw just a super light texture on it, warmed it up, and, you know, that's what I got. Pretty easy, just one light on the fly. Yeah, I've had a couple people come out to, you know, spend some time with me, and the one guy, within about 15 minutes the first morning, we got a model out, and he's going, "That's all you do?" And I go, "Yeah, that's all I do. It's simple. You know, I keep it real easy." Again, you can do groups with it. There's that last light.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't write down what it was. I wrote it down on the next one. So this is the final. 100 ISO, 5.6. Again, 5.6 I tend to do outside. I'm shooting with a 70 to 200. I tend to be back and compress it. I crank her up. 1/100th of a second, a third on the camera. See, if you have it hotter, what's going to happen, this is all going to be blown out. And you'll see that right away if you go 0.0. And you'll get to know that. It's like, oh man, I know it's going to be blown out in the background. Because I'm metering, my camera is metering here for that. So it's exposing for this and then just blowing out everything in the back. So you know that it's going to end up going that way. And a +3rd on the flash. And that's how it is. It's two different images, but it's the same. Actually, it's saved over of the one before where Kendra was smiling. So, but it's the same, identical shot situation, everything. And that's it. So that's all I've done with the group. Wash it across. Yeah, again, pretty easy, just one flash. Again, I'm looking for some interest in behind. Carefully don't have that sticking right out of the center of her head. But that's about it. This one here, shot of this girl, 100 ISO, f2.8, 1/320th of a second, 0.0. Shot outside, bright sun, just under a bridge. I thought, man, all these pillars are cool. We're going to have her lean out. So, you know, I shot it like that. Boom, drop it in. That's what I got. And it looks really goofy on here. Oh, there's your ghost image. Where'd that come from? Never noticed that when I had my Photoshop. And it's the low-res version anyway. But yeah, that's all I've done. From that to that. Pretty easy. This next one was shot in Nashville at the Club Mine downtown. Again, we had that little kind of mini workshop before Inferno, and we got into this club, which was really cool. Her name's Crystal. She took us in, 800 ISO, f2.8, 1/100th of a second, 0.0. That was the first shot. Again, generally in a situation like this, you're not going to have to change much from that 0-0. So again, when I retouched it, that's what I did. Just give it a nice pop. Just to that. And girls like to liquefy, add a little shadow down under her leg and stuff. So that was that one. This one, 200 ISO, f2.8. Again, I shoot a lot of 2.8 stuff, 1/320th, -3rd, +3rd on this one. I had a look and I'm thinking, well, I wonder why it was -3rd, because generally this would have been a 0-0. But yeah, -3rd, +3rd on it. Again, you're not going to move around much from that. I tend to like the images to look not as dramatic right off the bat, if you know what I mean. So I want to be able to just hit a multiply layer burn in Photoshop and clean it all up, and in that regard. Whoa. So that. Get a different image. Part of the reason I put a different one is because I'd saved over the JPEG of this one after, which I know you're not supposed to do, but I had. That's the same thing. Photoshopped out the flash. That's it. Pretty easy peasy. Again, so simple. That's actually in the shade. I just like the lines. So that's what I was looking at. I thought I'm just going to bring a little flash for a little bit of drama on the front of her, and you end up with that. Next one, I photographed a calendar. I'll start with the first one. And it was supposed to be a calendar that was done out at an army base. I had all my studio flashes. I had everything. The whole thing went sideways because of the promoter. So we ended up shooting it at the Outdoor World in Edmonton on a busy Saturday. They were pretty awesome. They let us use all the camo, all this kind of stuff. Every single image on this calendar was shot with one single 15-inch last light softbox, exactly like I've just shown you guys. There's Miss January, February, March. Paul is actually in the tent, and I could see the flash was right here, and I had the IR unit just kind of sitting. I could just see the IR unit right underneath the flap of the tent. Same thing. That one, same thing. Just that single flash. Again, we had to make it look, that's why I threw textures all over the stuff, because we had to make it look like there was, basically looked like there was nobody in the store. It was a rainy Saturday with probably 600-800 people in a big Outdoor World. So we shot all this stuff in there, all shot with one 50-inch, last light softbox and a 580 on it.
Couple quick questions for you, Warren.
November and December. Yeah, absolutely.
Some of these questions I would have answered directly, but I thought, it's probably good just as a review too. Kevin's asking
far away.
2.8, 70 to 200.
Mm-hmm.
That's quick, yes or no. You had mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
That's what you use. So yes, Kevin and everyone else.
200 really leaves my camera. So.
Brent's getting a little complicated on me. He's asking, are you using evaluative metering? That's a mode, I believe, on the camera. There's 3 modes: evaluative, center weighted, and spot.
Center weighted. I believe it's center weighted. Hang on, let me go back to it quick.
Evaluative is the more commonly used one. It's the one I use, but I know some people use.
Yeah, I believe it is. Let me just have a quick look. That's this right here. Isn't that evaluative?
Yeah, that looks like center weighted,
sure.
But that's
center
a
weighted is the center.
That could be it. Yeah,
it's a center weighted. Yeah, it's evaluative. Yeah, that's the one.
Brent's
what I use is evaluative.
Brent's also asking. Brent's asking. You're putting a single focus point on their face or eyes when you're focusing.
I never get. It all depends, I guess. If I'm back quite a ways and I'm zoomed up, I'm not in a big panic. If I'm doing something close up, let's get into some of these images and I'll show you what I mean. This one, I'm right here. I'm pulling the trigger on the center.
Uh-huh.
If something like this, it's going to be right on her face, right here.
Uh-huh.
2.8, same thing. With crystal, does it matter if I go here or here? In that situation, not really. Doesn't make much of a difference. If I'm a close-up, though, like that, yeah, I'm going to try to focus in here on her eyes. But, I mean, you can look at her lips. We're on the same plane. I can see what you mean. With 2.8, a lot of people freak out.
Uh-huh.
On the weekend, there was one guy talking about 2.8, I never shoot at 2.8, I never get in focus. Like, God, I shoot at 2.8 all the time. And you got to be a little more careful. And again, it's just a little bit of practice with your camera. But I shoot 2.8 all the time, with mine.
Yeah.
It rarely leaves 2.8, like I say. Only if I'm doing the outdoor stuff where I want 5.6-ish to get that kind of glowy, painty look in the back. That's about it. I leave it at 2.8.
Craig wants to know, are you shooting most of these in aperture priority?
All these. Every single one of these that's shot in here is shot at aperture priority.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that. Craig, weren't you paying attention? He mentioned that at the start.
That's okay. Everybody's probably sleeping at first.
It's the water in BC.
Yeah. These are all shot at AV. All shot AV. Yeah, no doubt. That's it. That's how I shot all those. So, you bet.
Cool.
And that's about it. Just do them up, and it takes a bit of practice. So ultimately, that's how I do it.
That's it in a nutshell. That's pretty. You mentioned earlier, like when you showed that guy, and he said, "Is that all? Is that it?" And it is. It's so simple.
That's all I do. I just really, if you're shooting with one light, you really have to pay attention to your surroundings and your environment.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can go on. I don't have the images loaded into this, but there is. We were down in Nashville. Again, we were shooting at the Club My. They had this spiral staircase. There was no other lights in there, and I thought, man, I really wanted to shoot, Crystal on the spiral staircase, cool. So we got a really cool curvy pose. We shot. A little bit of light kicked onto the wall behind her, so you could see the black lines of the staircase kind of wrapping around to match her body, and it looked so cool. And it was just one light. Yeah, she didn't have a kicker light on her. But it was really dramatic and it was interesting.
If you wanted to, you could add as many lights as you wanted into this system, couldn't you?
You totally can. Just throw a couple more in.
You could have 5.
I just keep it simple. I run around and shoot hardcore fast, and it doesn't take me long to photograph a senior or whoever, and just by the one simple light. But yeah, you can have as many in as you want.
Warren, have you ever tried it just on manual for complete and total control insofar as you make all the decisions as far as
I played with it a little bit, and I found I just kept going back to this,
because it worked, right?
Yeah, it works. And once you get in a flow with this, I found it was really simple. Again, I find if I'm shooting into the sun, though, let's say we're outside, it's a bright day, you got the sun just like pounding on the back of the girl's head, you got her, basically hands up in her hair, you're doing a really cool kind of shot like that. I find that I have to flip my camera to manual, so I have more control of the ambient, because my camera's just reading all over the map with that sun.
That's cool.
You know what I mean?
That's cool. Yeah. So in other words, you're using your head. You're using your brain, that computer between your ears, to make a decision. Do I go manual?
Exactly.
I got to mention something that I'm sure a lot of people, as they're looking through your images, Warren, especially when you go to before and after, they're all wondering about the Photoshop. You covered that in Nashville, didn't you? So
it's pretty simple.
If you wanted to go review the Inferno videos, Warren covers his Photoshop in there as well. So
yeah, you can see the before and after of that one. Add a little shadow. Really didn't mess with the shape. I just added shadow in there. A lot of shadow. I will pull in a little liquify. I'm not afraid to use it. And she appreciated the heck out of liquify.
Yeah.
I just tweak it up, add some highlights in her hair, make everything pop, a little soften, Whoops. Yeah, so that's kind of, I have a certain style with my Photoshop for sure.
So, yeah, if anybody wanted to watch those videos, they're in there, and plus a ton more. I find, just if I can get sort of for a second off topic about and get onto Photoshop for a sec, I love watching another person who is actually shooting and getting good results. I love watching them when they do a demonstration or a workshop, when they go through their Photoshop, because it's always something that they've incorporated that is based on what's working in their studio versus when you say go to a college, buy the book theory, and I've seen you do your workflow stuff. I've seen people like Julie and Guy and people like James and myself, and I find it's just you come up with these quirky little ways to make it work, and it's just like, wow. Well, they'll never teach you that in college, but it's so cool. So But well, I guess my final point to all that, Warren, is that when you learn stuff, you ultimately end up with your own techniques. So I can't emphasize that enough.
Absolutely.
Get out there and play, man. Just learn what you can from guys like Warren and James and whoever else, and then just tweak your own style. And there's no one way to do it. There's your own way. So
there's many ways to the finish line. It's whatever car you want to drive.
Anybody have any questions out there? We're kind of gone to the last portion of our webinar. I don't know if you had any more slides you wanted to cover there, Warren, but
I think that's pretty much about it. All I got on that stuff.
I know you're pretty tired. You were in the plane for 8 hours. You just literally got in last night, you were saying.
No, it's all right. It's been good for sure. No complaints. It's I love to travel, and if I get to go do it at school, so.
Yeah, and you're on fire, man. So, but if anybody has any questions, now's the time. And if you want to review any of this, by all means, it's going in the forum tomorrow. And of course, questions get posted in the forum, and Warren's always open to answering questions. That's one of the beautiful things about having the forum there available.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very, very
I'm back
cool.
for a while now.
Yeah, so you're back home for a while,
it's
but
different,
I hear you.
Yeah.
Being back home is different. It's like, wow, yeah, it's cool. But I hear you're going to Toronto in April. That's
we are for Inferno. Yeah, super stoked for that, and got a bunch of stuff on the go. It's going to be 6 or 7 different trips in the next 4 months here. So
on the go.
Yeah, exactly.
On the go. This is good. So people are saying thank you, Warren, for your webinar experience. Thanks for sharing that. And if anybody has any questions, fire away now, because we are going to wind her down soon. So getting more thank yous there, Warren. So, and of course, a big thank you from myself and all the other members at No BS Photo Success. And did you want to plug?
You guys have been awesome.
Do you want to plug your DVD? You said you had something you want to plug.
I talked for a few minutes, but I sure appreciate it, and it's one of those things I've been getting bugged for years. Last couple of years, people saying, "Man, you should do a DVD. You should do a DVD." First, it was a retouch one, and then a bunch of people wanted lighting ones, and I thought, you know what? A few months ago, let's just do it, and got a super cool guy to do it. It turned out awesome, and you see the boom mic in some shots, and there's some pretty funny instances in it for sure. But we cover basically all the lighting and kind of how I light from 1, 2, 3 lights, my high key, how I process everything, some off-camera flash. We go through all that kind of stuff. Tons of tips and tricks on retouching. Actually, a lot of the images you shot in here are in the retouch DVD. I step by step, start to finish, how I retouch everything on them, so to make them look exactly like that. So, basically it was 2 years, I contemplated to do it. It took me about 3 months to create the crazy thing, and lots of headaches and heartache and everything else. And, finally I was able to kind of put them out. So I have a lighting, DVD, and it's been a whole learning experience putting all this stuff out too. The whole online sales thing has been a bit of a headache, but we're finally getting it all done and together and ready to go out. And a retouching DVD. And again, I retouch a bunch of the images. We do like this one at Tabitha here, high key, start to finish, from the raw, untouched image right through till putting the smoke brushes in behind her and cropping it, putting your logo and sizing for web, right, start to finish on everything. How to make pop, how to get rid of stretch marks, the easiest, coolest way you'll ever find out for getting rid of stretch marks. So I got a really cool, technique for that. Basically, I was selling them for both for $149. Retail, $298 for both. For tonight only, I kind of offered it to the schoolhouse webinar I did. The other one I'll do it the same tonight as well. But $149 includes shipping. If you prefer a download, let me know. Download's, in all honesty, easier for me, but I'm super cool with mailing out the hard copy. They're supposed to be here before I went to St. John. We just got a message they're going to be here tomorrow. So, but if not, the download links will be tomorrow. I can get those out to you, and you can have them on your computer watching them tomorrow. So,
cool.
I want to offer this, like I say, it's just tonight, and I'll be pulling it off the website tomorrow, or off the link off tomorrow as well for them. So,
where's that link?
Right there. give it a try and see if it works. I just set it up tonight for this, and I'm so new at this, I won't ever, make a bunch of, that I'm know all the stuff about technology and web stuff, because I don't.
tinyurl.com/8ablq7p.
Yeah, see if it works, and if it takes you to the page.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, we'll just hound
Send me an
you.
email, or it should work, the dang thing, because I tried it before. And
Keep that screen on there for a second, because Kelly has a question that
sure. Yeah, fire away, guys.
probably something you can answer this question while that screen and people are writing down that address. He wants to know, could he go over the angle he points the laser light towards the subject? He often said 90 degrees, but it also sounded like he was feathering off the back edge of the softbox.
Which essentially is the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, same idea, right?
Yeah, let's say, let's try to get a way to describe it. You were to draw a line from the subject to your camera, okay? Normally, most people will take that softbox and feather it, more towards the subject, okay? Towards the client. What I'm going to do is imagine that line that's drawn between the camera and the subject. Imagine the face of the softbox, okay? So the white scrim on the front is parallel with the line drawn between the camera and the subject.
So it's 90 degrees.
90 degrees. But if you think about it, there's an angle to the sides of the softbox, right? So the close side to me, or the back side to the client, or the subject, the light that's coming off that softbox perpendicular to that, the back of that softbox, okay, the side of it, it's equivalent to window light. If you think about it, if you stood someone just by a window and you lean them against the edge of the window, it's the same light is all you're mimicking with the way I feather a softbox. I do that in a studio. I do that with the small softbox. That's just generally how I light all my stuff. I just feel that that's the best light, for my style.
You even use it on larger groups, because you did a demo at the Inferno Nashville. You showed a group of 8-10 people, right?
Yeah, and I used just one light. I did the demo in St. John on the weekend too, and they're like, "There's no freaking way." And I'm going, "Watch." Pulled it out, washed it around, and they just went, "Holy crap!"
It works. It's a beautiful source of light, isn't it?
It is. It's just feeling it and learning to use it the way you can. A really cool analogy of a softbox is a fan. Imagine a fan is blowing at 90 degrees, okay, out in front of you, and you walk into it. And as you get closer to it, you'll feel the softness of the air wrapping around your face. As you get further into it, it's harder and harder and harder, right? You see what I mean? Feel the same thing with your softbox and your light. Just analogy, like I say, of a fan to your softbox. So I always pull that out. I have the subject stand just behind the softbox. The softbox at 90 degrees, point straight across, and I'll have them step just behind it. And that's pretty much where I shoot. That's my favorite light. You don't need to put a reflector up. You don't need to put another softbox. You don't need to do anything. Keep it really simple. You're welcome to put a reflector up. Adds a little more, but I never do for my style of lighting.
Yeah. You know what? I just remembered. I have a posing guide in the forum, and I sketched that exact lighting you just described. I sketched it out. So if anybody wanted to go see my little sketch, it's identical to what you showed at the Nashville Inferno. And I showed the image, and then I showed the setup, and I drew lines to show that. I love your fan analogy. That's a really good one. I've never thought of that. So I'm going to be swiping that one. That's a good one.
But it's true if you think about it,
It's so true. It's a little more work, obviously, and a little more mastery, and a little more, it's a little more subjective, but
you know what's cool, though, what can help you, I love to shoot, again, this was a discussion a while back on the forum. Do you shoot with the lights off in the studio or with them on? And I prefer them off because I like big pupils. I'm a fan of big pupils. I don't like little pupils, and I'd rather have, I think it's just my preference, right?
Cool.
So use your modeling light. Stand your subject behind your light. Stand holding onto your softbox and start to spin it. And just have a look and how how the modeling light falls on your subject. Because that's what your flash is going to do.
Cool.
So just play with the modeling light and just watch how it works.
That's excellent.
Just turn the light, you know, and
Yeah.
that's a cool way to play with it.
And the best thing that you all can do, and hopefully you've written down this address, is go buy it, because you got good information like this. It's well worth having on your computer and at your studio, so you can, you know, educate yourself and just.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, I buy as much information and DVDs as I can. I have shelves of them, and I'm a big believer in education. So when somebody has something that is proven, like what you've got, and it's just totally awesome, I just love your stuff. Why not? So I hope you all get out there and buy that and invest. You're not just investing in Warren, you're investing in your own education. So Jerry is mentioning, asking, it's U.S. dollars?
Canadian dollars.
It's Canadian dollars. And
Maybe
Robert
a little less.
Robichaud mentioned that the tiny URL is indeed working. So
It does work, eh? Cool.
it's all good. So it's hopefully last chance to write that URL down, guys. I think we're going to sign off now, because it's time to get to bed. Some of you guys it's later, some of you guys it's earlier. What time is it, Saskatchewan? 9:15?
It is, 9:15. Yeah.
Right. Way past your bedtime there, Warren.
I'm just getting going, Rob.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I know. I'm on East Coast time now, where it was like 11:15.
Yeah. Well, it is past your bedtime, so yeah. Debbie's asking, is it over? It is over. So again, if you have any, if you want to watch this again, it's going to be in the forum, or if you are in the forum and you want to just send a post or a question.
Yeah.
Got
If you have any questions, just send me a question. I'm totally cool with that. I do my dangest to, you know, answer it as soon as I can. If I don't answer it in like the next day kind of thing, don't freak out. My world is beyond busy right now, but that's okay. I will get back to you. So if you have questions, just fire them out. I'm totally cool with answering anything I can.
Debbie's asking if it's over. I think she just signed in.
Oh.
Sorry, Debbie. She read it wrong. She's sad. Debbie, I just mentioned that this was recorded, so if you're in No BS Photo Success in the forum, it's recorded. It'll be installed in there. It should be by tomorrow. So, all right, we're good to go. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we have other webinars coming up. Tomorrow night we have Brian DeMint, another one of the presenters at the Inferno. He'll be doing a webinar on design. Hopefully, Warren, you can check that out as well. I'd love to have you in there. Brian,
I should be able to tomorrow. That'll be cool.
Brian's doing some amazing stuff, absolutely stellar images, and very unique. I look at his images and I just go, how the heck? It's very different. So, but anyways, I just want to let you know that we have that coming on tomorrow, plus other webinars down the road, the Fire Chat webinar. Craig Manelli with the Nikon. We're going to be doing the same concept as what we did tonight, but for the Nikon shooters with Craig Manelli coming up soon. I don't know the dates, but they're in the forum. But again, Warren, thank you very, very much for putting the information out. I really appreciate your attendance, and we'll see you.
Well, like I say, yeah, thanks for having me, for sure. I appreciate it.
All right, I'm out of here, guys. I'm going to close the webinar off, and you all have yourselves a good night. Thanks, Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. See you guys later.